That's right. Okay, hopefully everyone can hear us all right. So welcome to this expert insight session on AI and hopefully demystifying AI and its applications in nuclear. So this forms part of our wider Dalton Nuclear Institute's Expert Insight series, hosted by the Dalton Nuclear Institute's champions. So my name is Joshua. I'm one of those Dalton champions, and today I'm joined by...
Yeah, I'm Ahmed. I'm also one of the champions. I'm a first-year PhD student, part of the Fusion CDT, and I'm studying tungsten.
And today's session, we're all going to be focusing on AI and its applications in nuclear, probably primarily in fission, but hopefully we can cover some of the whole areas and all the topics. So feel free to ask questions. If you do want to ask any questions, we do have a Slido. So if you want to scan that QR code or click on the link in the chat and start adding questions for our speakers, we'll read them out and then hopefully spark some nice debate and discussion around AI. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to my colleague to introduce our two amazing speakers.
Okay, so our first speaker, she is one of our Dame Kathleen Lorenzo Research Fellows here at the University of Manchester. She's been part of many projects involving robotics and AI for extreme environments such as rain and orca, and is now a researcher for Cradle. Her research focuses on interdisciplinary, experimentally rigorous human-robot interaction, or HRI, work. Her expertise spans biomimetic, brain-based, therapeutic and industrial robotics, HRI methodology development, ethical and theoretical considerations of robotics and AI, and her key themes include trustworthiness, verification, responsibility and accountability, and the centrality of human psychology and socio-political factors to effective robotics and AI development within the real world. So could you all please join me in welcoming Dr. Emily Collins. And our next speaker, he's enjoyed a career at Sellafield since graduation, where he first was a simulation analyst, developing world-leading simulation tools for nuclear operation. He then went on to work in corporate planning for several years before recently acquiring the position of Senior AI Lead for the Technical Directorate, a role he noted as not having existed when he was at uni, which shows just how fast the landscape has evolved. His role is described as the thoughtful application of both AI and machine learning to deliver practical, explainable AI that improves safety, reduces cost, and accelerates programs across the facility lifecycle, whilst also looking at the strategic impacts AI will drive in the wider organization and operating environment. So again, will you please join me in welcoming Daniel Braunt. Okay, so I think we can just kick straight off with the first question. So AI is a very loaded term, which has taken on a lot of meanings, and it's become a sort of catch-all term. So I was wondering if we could start by explaining what we mean when we say AI, and if this differs between industry and research.
Go on, you can go first.
Is this thing on? Yeah, great. Right. I mean, it's always been... It was instantiated as quite a broad term, wasn't it? I mean, the story, as I remember it being told, is that in the early 1950s, a bunch of people got together at Dartmouth and to talk about using computers to do interesting things, and they didn't get on with the cybernetics professor. So they weren't sure what their new field was going to be called, but it couldn't be cybernetics because they didn't like the cybernetics professor. So it's always been a bit of a catch-all term for doing stuff with computers that's sort of slightly beyond the current well understood bit. But I think there's if you ask the man on the Clapham omnibus or the person on the Clapham omnibus now, you'd probably get an answer about it, something ChatGPT. And that generative AI bit is the bit that's getting all the headlines. But if you search, researchers use AI to ... and put it into Google News, the bulk of those things will be machine learning. So that's probably the bit that's actually directly valuable, applicable to us today, especially in nuclear. We're getting great value out of what are reasonably old school machine learning techniques, because they're really useful for doing predictive maintenance and so on, and optimization and all of that good stuff. So it is a bit of a grab bag of stuff, isn't it?
Yes. Okay, so artificial intelligence, AI, there you go. That's what it means. And you're right, it has this history of disparate understanding when it comes to literally producing something that is considered unalive, artificial, and intelligent. It's the second word that I think has evolved more over time. And so now we've got all these fractious ways of describing AI, such as machine learning techniques, more symbolic AI ideals, or people just are aware of some kind of interesting predictive or fancy software that's built into something that everyone already uses, like smart washing machines or driverless cars. We don't have time for me to explain that. And so the term has become even more nebulous as people have more examples to put on, well, that's what AI is. And I find, personally, all opinions are my own, by the way, obviously. Do I need to write that? I don't know what I was going to say now because I got scared. I was going to say something bad for the uni. Oh God, what was I going to say? I'm just pointing out, I've been in bed for 2 weeks with a terrible illness, and this is my first day back to work, and I'm a bit out of it. So apologies, everyone. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, robots. Right. So in robotics, if I ask all of you to picture a robot, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to have something quite different. Some of you might have something practical. A lot of you will have something that's in science fiction or media. You know, C-3PO versus a KUKA arm if you happen to work in that area. It used to be the case that AI was this pushback against cybernetics, the evolution of a new understanding of a brain in ones and zero terms. But now it's so nebulous and across so many different things, it is getting harder and harder to discuss it in one term, just like with robotics. This has also meant a shift in policy globally and how we define it via research, which is why as a roboticist, I've started referring to my work as embodied AI in order that people that might want to give us money or listen to us at a political level think we're talking about AI when we're still talking about how we're deploying it in big machines that are scary. And that's where these industries come together.
Okay, so
Yeah, is that right?
yeah, no, that was great. So I have a follow-up question. Do you guys think there is a danger in AI becoming this like over-encompassing term just for the sake of funding?
We're already there, mate. Next question. I mean, maybe it's a nuanced.
Okay.
I'm so tired. I'm so sorry.
Sorry. I guess the next question is, do you guys believe pursuing AI and its development is something that is really beneficial? Is it something that we need to be doing?
I mean, I do have an answer, but I've been let out of my box now, so I can talk. I find that the question, unfortunately, is redundant. We're already there. We've been there for a while. In fact, with the speed with which things are changing and the speed with which with which certain advanced technologies are being used in industry and daily life more frequently than they were even last year, we're at a point where things like global legality and standardizations and policy is now too far behind for the sorts of technologies we're already dealing with. It is not just something we need to be doing. It is absolutely paramount that it is focused on by understanding that it's super nebulous, by understanding that it's a catch-all term now, and by understanding that it's already there in a way that is sort of insidiously, proper soapbox time, tinfoil hat on, in a way that is insidiously now about, population control. I've listened to a lot of podcasts from my sickbed over the last 2 weeks as well. It's become a badge that represents how humans are trying to control each other and their worlds in a way that isn't just about developing efficient technologies anymore. And I know we're here to talk about the nuclear industry, which is a really wonderful example of a strict, very sharply guided policy-wise, critically risk-averse what's the word I'm looking for? Field industry. That wants to be using more of this because it is super helpful, while simultaneously going, "Ooh, none of this is actually verifiable." Eek. And it's a very nice example of the problem between producing a piece of technology that you can verify is going to do exactly what you've told it to do, and trying to get everyone that's in your company on board with thinking that, while simultaneously everyone trying to get on board with thinking that knows how it works and it's not true, and everyone is simultaneously concerned who is to blame when it eventually goes wrong. We have no legal protections. So from something as simple as machine learning being absolutely brilliant for predicting critical infrastructure situations as we go forward, the other stuff that needs to happen around the deployment of advanced technology, in the same way that, it took 40 years of the first cars being a bit crap before someone was like, we should probably put, a brake on there and a seatbelt and stuff like that. We need to be doing the same things with AI. Oh, I've meandered now. Okay, I'm done. I'm good. And a little nap time now. What was the question?
Well, do you have any thoughts, Dan?
Can you remember what the question was? Sorry. We drifted.
Well, we started talking about why is pursuing AI in its development beneficial.
Well, I think as Emily's just sort of demonstrated, but probably it's unhelpful to put AI together as a single lump, and this is in some ways both the risk and the sort of the hazard of that is it's not one thing, and it's unhelpful to think of it as this sort of dense lump of homogeneous stuff, and actually we need to be looking instead at the individual strands of tech that could be very usefully applied, or actually might be more hazardous. We can well understand the confidence with which some prediction models will make a prediction, while having absolutely no idea how some of the other things produce their answers. It's a bit more opaque, and some of them we will find easier to deploy into a highly regulated environment like nuclear, and some of them we probably need to push back a bit more, or rethink the way we do it, because it can't be done safely at present, and we're in this sort of potentially risky area where people could be incentivized almost to use some tools which are more poorly understood or would have a higher rate of error because it makes their lives easier, right? It's probably a big thing in higher education as well, I presume, is the thinking about how would you prove that someone has or hasn't used, ChatGPT to help them write an essay. If that's not an essay, but is instead the documentation around a piece of kit in a nuclear facility being safe to operate, and here's your expertise and your expert judgment on that. Prove to me now, in a world where ChatGPT can produce convincing looking outputs, that isn't something that has been generated with a machine learning tool or a ChatGPT or something. So the existence of these tools by themselves, whether they're used or not, might dilute the power of regulation a little bit, and that's something we need to consider quite carefully, I think. I remember half reading and I think mostly understanding maybe the stuff around Gresham's law and what was that 1970s economics paper, the Market for Lemons, which is about the pricing of secondhand cars, because you can't prove that someone's definitely done the oil changes on that car that seems very reasonably priced. So actually, you're not going to pay what they want for it because they can't evidence to you that it's as good as they say. We're going to enter that position quite quickly in a lot of regulated spaces, I think, because there's a strong incentive for people to use these tools to make their lives easier at a local level. And you've got local optimization of that, which is degrading at higher levels. And I think that's potentially an issue. But we're going to have a good hard think about that and work it up into a snappier anecdote.
No, we don't want snappy. No.
Okay, well, maybe before we run away with the ethics too much, because we will get onto it, do you want to tell us about some of the successful deployments of AI in the nuclear industry?
Yeah. So we, like the nuclear industry as a whole, is obviously being very, very careful with AI deployments. So we've got plenty of proofs of concept, and we haven't got a huge amount of stuff that's deployed into full bore production at the moment. We've got some good examples of work that's been done on things like waste characterization. So for us, we're not a nuclear reactor station. We're doing mostly remediation on existing legacy facilities that are left over from the 1950s. And part of that is retrieving material from silos and ponds, and using computer vision. Then can we work out what waste is in the stuff as we pull it through into newer, more modern containment or into newer containers? Because we need to fill in an amount of documentation about what goes into each container. It's waste characterization. So it works reasonably well for that. There's been a great couple of proof of concept on looking at that using computer vision instead of having to have someone run through frame by frame through video watching this stuff being moved. It works quite well. And computer vision is well understood. It's reasonably mature as a type of technology. I mean, OpenCV was released in the early 2000s, and it's gotten better and better since then. It's sort of in everything, reasonably well understood. The big question then is, can we get enough training material, training data that's well labeled to give us the sort of a low enough error that it's something that we can run safely? We've obviously got a load of predictive maintenance challenges. So can we give sensor data into a model that will predict failure well ahead of time so that we can ease our maintenance burden? Because if we can replace things before they're predicted to fail rather than on a schedule, we'll save a whole load of maintenance work potentially, assuming we can be assured enough that it's either low hazard enough if it does get it wrong, or that we've got some other indicator. It could be a great saving. It puts people out of harm's way and all that sort of work. And then there's a load of stuff lower down in the stack. So we've got a big robotics deployment, and we're looking at a lot of research around hands out glove boxes and things like that. So part of that is quite low level, not autonomy, but rather than a person sort of, you're not giving individual servo inputs, are you? When you're controlling a robot arm or something, you're sort of giving it an intent, a strategic level direction, and it's fulfilling that. So does that count as AI or not?
See, I'd say that's a very good, because I've done a lot of segregation and sort work with glove box handling, and it's a great example of the term embodied AI, where the predictive technology has to be put into a robot, because the whole point is to separate the person from having to fiddle around with nuclear materials in legacy areas.
Fiddle might be a slightly strong term.
Fiddle.
Work very professionally and carefully with high hazard materials.
I'm so sorry. I'm not a professional, darling.
And I suppose then there's obviously there's then also the paperwork side of it. So quite apart from all the embodied robotics that's going on and people in harm's way doing the atomic stuff, we've got reams and reams of records, paperwork, and all of that. At what level would it be appropriate to use some posh LLM-enabled natural language processing to assist us with cutting down on the search space when we're looking for information? Is semantic search with a little bit of large language model in there as well gives you much better, faster answers over huge data sets? How do we assure ourselves that it's giving us the right answers enough of the time that it's a useful tool? And how do we make sure that it's not missing the 11th search result, which would have been the ... on the other hand, paragraph that we really could have used with having included in our report when it comes back out? So we're still working a lot of that through, and we're trying to be quite careful with it. My understanding is across nuclear, probably most people are in a similar place where we're finding it easier to do things with machine learning models because we've got some level of confidence and we're able to validate the GPT style large language models are still more problematic at the moment, unless the architecture around them is quite carefully bounded.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how you keep saying machine learning, but I assume they're very bounded then with the data sets that you're working with in order to make the sorts of valid predictions to the confidence levels you require in your industry, which are very high.
Yes.
Thankfully.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a good paper came out last week from the ONR, which is they've been doing some AI sandbox work, and for the tech people in the room, it's the other kind of sandbox. So strategically, they've been using a couple of exemplars from us and our NDA organization, NRS, which looks after the old Magnox sites broadly, looking at some waste characterization type models and looking at how the ONR would go. Sorry, the ONR is the Office for Nuclear Regulations. There are, along with the EA, who are also involved with this work, they are our regulator. Get mixed up there.
EA being Energy Authority, I assume.
Environment Agency.
Environment Agency.
Yeah. So the Environment Agency and the Office of Nuclear Regulation have been running a sandbox to look at how they would go about regulating a sort of, not quite a hypothetical, but an exemplar of a machine learning model if we wanted to run it in live. And that's been a really interesting piece of work. But the report for that's online now. So if you search ONR and sandbox, I imagine you'll find it.
So I read part of the report, and I thought it was really interesting, and it seemed like a really successful experiment. But in the report, they mentioned that it is like a very narrow scope machine learning model. And if they were to do something similar for, let's say, LLMs or more complex machine learning algorithms, that they should consider taking industry funding or letting industry do the sandboxing themselves. So I was wondering, do you think that there could be like a conflict of interest there? And I think the problem like arises from the fact that industry is moving so fast, AI development is moving so fast, and it's like, how can regulation keep up with it?
Yeah, the regulation chase. I mean, yeah, what's the classic move fast and break things thing? We absolutely don't want that anywhere near nuclear. So I think we're comfortable with being on the leading-ish, but not bleeding edge of change. We haven't got a profit driver in some senses because we don't sell things. So we don't need to be, apart from this sort of, it's easier to get research funding because you're doing something AI-y probably thing. We're not driven to adopt AI just because it's sort of new and funky. And one of the things we've got as part of our AI strategy is we need to be really careful with the benchmarking. Can we genuinely prove that there's a benefit to making, I don't know, Copilot available or ChatGPT available to people? For a lot of white collar work, the productivity benefit is very hard to measure. So the proof of the value of making AI available, chatbots or semantic search available to people is then hard to measure as well, I suppose.
Yeah, I think trustworthiness in general is a hard topic around AI. I know, Emily, your research focuses a lot on trustworthiness with maybe robots more specifically, but
across the board now. So the first thing you need to understand is that the word trustworthiness is another one of those sort of catch-all terms like AI that's being inserted into a lot of documentation and discussion without real clarification of what people mean when they say it. So trustworthiness can be an objective value that something has, like I trust that my bottle isn't going to leak because it doesn't have a hole in, and it can be a subjective opinion that I might have about what a great buddy my friend Mustafa is. Yeah, that's right. And I trust that I could ask him for advice and receive that advice back. And so in my opinion, he'd be trustworthy, but that's not really an objective measurable thing that everyone would agree with. And when it comes to AI trustworthiness, benchmarking levels of significant guaranteed outputs is sort of what you want because you're trying to risk manage constantly, right? I really liked what you said about the nuclear industry not wanting to be on the bleeding edge of stuff because we're very risk adverse, right? Conversely, you do have massive profit-driven companies using fairly similar algorithm technologies like automotive industries, for example, and a lot of medical tech devices dependent on the policy of the country that it's working within that are blurring that boundary far too much. Again, in my opinion, these are my opinions, given the risk. So when there's a nuclear incident, we factor in value of number of lives or long-term impacts it's going to have. But if, just a couple of people a week are getting killed by faulty cars, we start asking ourselves where the line is drawn. And so that word trustworthiness also starts to blur, right? So you want to build... you want a piece of technology that is trustworthy in the sense that, for example, your toaster has been kite marked and standardized as not going to kill you in your kitchen. Just cook toast, cook bread. Toast is the product, right? I love that. Anyway, you know what I mean? Produce toast. And unfortunately, because of the speed with which things are changing and whether or not you are a profit-driven company, those chasing that regulation can be tricky because a lot of people will want less regulation in order to produce more products at the risk of saying, trust us, it's fine. And, or you actually get a separate, regulatory body that says, no, we've also double checked this now, you can trust us. And then when you've got the consumer side of thing, and by consumer, I'm even talking about people that live in the same country as a nuclear site. They are sharing their country and their air with something that they're trusting somebody has regulated enough to be safe for everyone, and yet walking around on streets every day with people using them as experimental participants without their knowledge as they test algorithms on the road. Where am I going with this? I don't know where I was going with this. This is good stuff, though. What was the question?
Topic on trustworthiness.
Oh, yeah. So, right. Okay, I'll give you an example, right? So imagine that you oh wait, how does this example go? Wow, I'm really sorry about, I'm normally in much better form than this. So imagine that you've got a buddy and you're aware that your friend has recently been to see a really good therapist, and it's really helped them to come to terms with something really significant that's going on in their life that has been affecting their day-to-day. You go and talk to your friend, you say, I'm having a similar problem now. Can you give me the number of Dr. Collins and I can go and see her in her office and we can talk? And your friend gives you this contact and you make an appointment and you go and see the doctor in their clinic because you find your friend trustworthy and their experience is trustworthy, and you know that your friend has your best interests at heart. Okay, but now imagine you've gone into work one day and your boss has decided that everyone on your floor is going to get free complimentary therapy because it's really good for you. But you're also aware that there are layoffs coming up. And depending on what country you live in, and depending if you're unionized or not, and depending on whether or not doctor confidentiality actually exists, they might send you to the exact same Dr. Collins who is going to review stuff, but might not have control over the outputs that are produced in those sessions. And you might actually really appreciate the therapeutic whatever, but you go into that office and you are now not engaging with that clinician at the same level. When we talk about trustworthy algorithms, AI, technologies, it is much like the technology itself is that clinician's degrees, her experience, her ability to treat, but the trustworthiness comes from who is sending that into your personal space and what is happening there. If I am a worker and I go onto site and I've been given a new tool to use, but I know that my boss is way more driven by profits and margins and really doesn't give a darn about who, whether or not you can pay your mortgage next month and get home on time to read to your kids before they go to bed. How you engage with that piece of technology and how much you trust it is going to be much more to do with your relationship with the person giving you that thing than it actually is with the thing. One way, of course, to overcome that is to increase regulatory bodies so that there is this third party that you can look at and say, my fancy toaster's got a kite mark. I trust the kite mark. I could trust the fancy toaster, even if it's given to me by my slimy boss, who I really don't trust at all. And so it's this complex web of, it's not, and you said it as soon as we sat down, it's not the AI's fault. She's very nice. She's trying to do her job over here. She's lovely. I spend a lot of time alone in a basement with robots. Just bear with me. And yet, it's used as a sort of deflect, look over here, AI is the problem. It's not, it's capitalism. Capybara. It is.
Look, I read a lot of Cory Doctorow as well. Intuitification is real.
It's more than that, obviously. I was just going through the laugh, so thank you.
So I guess part of that problem is AI has this like black box nature, right? Where you can't see the decisions it's making, and so you don't understand maybe what the authority is doing with the AI, what their intentions are. But maybe more on the black box, we can talk about responsibility. So maybe like a little case study. Let's say an AI assists in writing a safety case, right? Which is something that could definitely happen at Setterfield, probably has happened. And that safety case later contributes to an incident. Where do we go with the legal and moral responsibility?
Oh, do you mind if I just... That is a perfect follow-up to the example I just gave. Did you know I was going to give that example?
Actually, yes.
What, sorry? Oh, you did? You didn't? Oh, you did? Oh, you
No,
did?
yeah, you gave a lecture on that.
Oh, did I? Oh, yeah. No, I give a lot of lectures. Where am I? No. But yeah, oh, yeah, that. Yeah, that. What I just said. It's completely... It is the biggest problem with safely deploying any kind of advanced technology anywhere in the world today. What or who or how, where does the responsibility fall when things inevitably go wrong? Yeah, that's not fun either. See, this is my point I was making about everyone gets really sad when I talk.
Well, Dan, maybe as like the senior AI lead, do you have anything to say?
Well, yeah. Well, my colleague Olivia here, who's been doing some excellent work on some training material for us at Sullivan. I think there's a double-stranded thing with this, and it's on the one hand we've got these big central systems that we're very carefully engineering, and we're doing a lot of work around the edges on it behaving safely and us having an idea of the confidence intervals and everything else. And we've given everyone access to Copilot. So there's then inherent on us is an idea of handing down some training, and rule number one in there is this is a tool. You are being able to use this tool if you find it useful, and you are responsible for checking the outputs of the tool. So it's absolutely never going to be appropriate to say the AI made a mistake in this report that I sent you. You know, it's always going to be I used the AI to shortcut some of the work I was doing, and it messed up, and I caught it, and then I had to do it by hand. But no, it's going to be a deeper and deeper problem, I suppose, because it's going to be increasingly unclear at times whether there's some piece of AI lurking somewhere in the stack, and just how well it works or doesn't, and whether we're clear on its sort of guardrails or not, I suppose. But yeah, it's by no means simple, this one.
No. I always wondered when I was reading up on this, like an issue that could happen, probably is happening, will get worse, is if Sellafield operators use AI to accelerate the output, it means that the regulator will probably also have to use AI in order to keep up. And very quickly, we're going to run into a scenario where it is AI checking AI, talking to AI, doing all our safety work for us. But I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that, or what do you think the consequences could be?
Well, yeah, it is a concern, and actually shift the thing a bit and look at what's going to likely happen in this sort of cybersecurity space. I suppose, you know, that there'll be models enabling people to do the script kiddie thing from the 90s, you know, and on the other hand, there'll be then models that are dark trace style embedded into networks, looking for new and novel threats and trying to block them at the endpoint. I guess the risk is that will be sort of adversarial and sort of grow, and will cost us more and more energy on both sides. Past a certain point, if these things are expensive enough to run because the energy price has gone up, maybe it'll be uneconomical to do. But we thought that about spam emails, and that hasn't happened. So I suppose the other thing is, you look back to the 90s, Kevin Mitnick all over again, right? The easiest thing to go after won't be the computers, it'll be the meat using them. So we are going to have much better, much more AI-enabled deepfake emails, phishing emails, and everything else coming for us, trying to steal our credentials and all of that. So we're through the looking glass into a brand new paradigm of like really threatening security posture as well, which is
I'm so
fun.
glad you said that, because that's normally me when you start losing the audience. It's
Need a
true though.
capybara.
I completely. We need capybara too. No, I completely agree with everything you just said, but worse.
Do you know what's funny? I saw a lecture include in one of their courseworks, right? They put in white text, like if this is put into an AI prompt, it will do something, so that they could see if people are cheated or not, which I think is funny. I think that kind of stuff there is a risk, because if you're handing things over to a regulatory body, you could end up tricking the AI.
I think another huge problem that a lot of people don't think about is that our future workers in 10 years' time may have outsourced so much of their creativity and intelligence to AI that when it does come to being able to spot problems, or see whether something is, or oh god, what's the word? Oh my gosh, I've forgotten the word for debugging. Wow, wow, that's bad. No one else is going to see this. That's fine. But you're going to get a generation of workers who have cobbled together a bit of code, said it's fine, something's going to fail, and you're going to be exactly like you said. People should be responsible, but I don't think people are thinking like that. It's like people who say, well, the marketing said it was already a fully self-driving car, so I didn't have to pay attention. So I didn't pay attention. I didn't kill the person that sold me the car did. And I think we're probably already there. Give it a couple more years and it's just going to be me and capybaras on an island in Norway with no Wi-Fi. Just isolated in a Faraday cage.
But it's, I mean, so I have to admit, let's not call it cramming, but I was panic reading some of your publications, your papers on the train down.
Oh, like one of my students, thank you.
Yeah. And there's one you put out about I'm going to get the terminology wrong, the abilities versus the sort of the marketed competencies of robots.
Oh,
back in 2020.
I absolutely love. Yeah, what a great.
And
yeah.
Is there a piece where some of the problem with some of this is that we are being pitched? ChatGPT is PhD level at stuff, probably everything, and actually it's it's sort of kind of capable at some stuff and is outsmarted by a reasonably bright toddler at other stuff, and that disjointed reality of I've tried to use this tool and I've been told it's excellent. At what point does this sort of crash the desire to use these tools for absolutely everything because they just aren't as capable as they're being pitched as? Or it turns out the people developing them have got very weird things they want to automate. I'm always a bit struck by the Google. You can book a flight without looking at where it's going. Like, great, thanks Google. I've always wanted that. Like I don't know. There's a piece where like
you're right. You're completely right.
At what point does the demand for ChatGPT drop because it's just not that great? Or are we just assuming the next one's going to be better?
I think, again, it's a slightly adjacent question you want to focus on. Human beings are inherently lazy. That's why fat and salt tastes amazing and sugar's brilliant and sitting down's great because we are wired to conserve as much energy as possible and just sit happily on a nice little bit of grass, all safe and cozy. ChatGPT and its ilk have been designed to be gamifiably addictive. It becomes addictive to put in one word and get crap back and be like, I'm not even going to check it. No one cares. Just the apathy of, oh God, definitely like a whole page of capybaras now. But it's the apathy that we're fighting. We're fighting core human psychology, which has been strategically used to sell product for people much richer than us. Capitalism. The problem isn't the technologies are going to lose their way. It's that people are going to grow up unable to think critically. I mean, you've met people, right?
Okay. All right. I think I'll stop with my
was that
questions.
too bleak? Did
No,
I
I
go
think
too
that's
far?
great. No. Yes. Yeah, we'll take some questions from online. So I'm going to hand you guys to the mercy of the Q&A.
Of the chat, yes. Yeah, so we've had quite a few questions flooding in, both on Teams and on the Slido. So if you haven't already added your questions, make sure you add them on there and upvote the ones you want to see read out, because there's a lot of questions on there, and I don't know if we'll get through all of them in time. So I think one that's a good one to start with, following on from the conversation of like people using these AI tools and they're becoming more and more dependent on them and less so relying on their own skill set sort of thing. And AI is normally framed in a way of like freeing people to do more high value work. Do you guys, well, what's your views on like, is that actually what's happening, or are we avoiding a harder conversation on about job displacement? Are people actually moving on to these higher value ones? And if we are replacing a lot of these workers with these AI tools, are we going to miss a generational knowledge gap sort of thing as the next people come up?
I mean, yes to that last point. Of course we will. Of course we will. Something that was quite fun when I was doing some offshore oil rig robotics work was sometimes they'd have to get people out of retirement to go over to the rig to try and understand what was going on with the system, because the nuances of these larger scale systems are exactly that. You've sort of got to know it. Like like a good friend. And with the introduction of more and more autonomous and semi-autonomous agents, we are losing generational knowledge of how things work. So that's completely true. And the bit at the beginning is as well, I guess. I can't remember what it was. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, actually, no. Actually, I think that the job displacement shouldn't be as bad as it's going to be, because we didn't really think about this stuff in a way that we actually believed it was going to happen 10 years ago. So people have been worried about this issue for a while, but we've had a sudden flip the last 3 or 4 years, and the displacement of jobs has not caught up. And now, sadly, we've got people getting too lazy to even want to do. Oh, no, go on, you speak.
If you look at AI as sort of, I always look at digitization. I mean, you think about job displacement. There's certainly going to be a change in roles. You look, I'm 40 something, and early 40s. It's fine. Like the high street when I was a kid had a lot more travel agents and banks and things on it. And I'm an introverted type who did a comp sci degree, so I'm not that sad about that. I've been delighted to buy things online because I don't really like talking to people that much. I'm pretending to be extroverted today. But if you went into a travel agent, you can now do that with, I don't know, EasyJet and Airbnb.com and all of those other big .coms that are acting as these sort of controlling points for the rest of the internet now. But you don't need that shop on the high street anymore. So you've saved someone sitting behind a desk waiting for someone to just wander in, and you've sort of consolidated that down a bit. Same with banks, I suppose. And there's a bunch of stuff that now isn't on the high street because you just do it online and it's way more convenient. So that's a change, but other stuff sprung up in the meantime. I know mostly vape shops, but we do need to figure out what to do with the high street, because it's a different model going forwards. And I'm not sure just recalling the heady days of being able to wander down to a shop and buy a trip to Greece is necessarily the answer. But
have we really lost those jobs though, or have they just gone into tech and things like that? So Airbnb is a massive company that employs a lot of people who otherwise might be 1 or 2 people sat in a shop passionate about travel.
Yeah, and they're now probably working from home. But the other side of that's also being clear about what's being automated. I suppose sometimes I am wary that people, and again, it's maybe a bit of a knowledge thing. We got asked a question this week about digitizing, doing handwriting recognition on paper forms that get filled in on some of our facilities. Like, yeah, really good question. Handwriting recognition's it's made massive advances in the last couple of years. It's amazing, really, really clever. Why aren't we just giving these operators tablets so they can fill this stuff in directly? Like, why are we using whiz-bang arcane magic technology to read handwriting off a piece of paper and put it into a database? Why don't we just enter it directly in with a tablet? Could we end run around some of these automations and actually do it with a much less energy intensive method that isn't going to have quite such a high error rate? So there's a piece around maybe like we're trying to sort of digitize the wrong stuff or use AI tooling for the wrong stuff, maybe.
I just want to give one example of changing the way things are done without knowing what that thing does because have you always used it is a massive problem that we're going to have. So there's a study, and I really need to find the author because I use this example all the time. It was just can we make hospital wards more efficient? Replace all the end of bed notes with tablets. Deaths increased on the ward. And it's because handwritten papers will show the decline of a patient in real time through rubbings out and changes on the paper. Then a tablet, which someone might just look at and go, okay, stable for the last hour. But they won't then know to pay a little bit more attention because prior to that, the notes were very different. And the way that something is written by hand on a bit of paper in a medical context is really important. And similar thing could be said in high-risk industries, when having the ability to just write something down in pen and paper quickly whilst you're thinking about it, or, oh no, I've spilt some coffee on my tablet and now it's all gone, when the step that you're trying to make is critical. I just think sometimes, God, I absolutely hate the fact that a lot of cars just have digital dashboards. That's the most ridiculous thing ever. They're giant machines that can kill people. And if you crack it... Anyway, I just think there are some things that don't need automating. And I'm not a Luddite, I mean, robotics is my bread and butter, but I just, pick up a pen, God.
I suppose that actually goes in quite nicely to one of the other very common questions on here, and I suppose it's a term that's used quite regularly, that with the explosion of AI sort of thing, and the applications we're currently seeing. Some people see it as a bubble, that we're in an AI bubble sort of thing. So how can we safeguard in the nuclear sector and beyond against this AI, the fortunes that AI has brought for us, and how can we manage that?
Yeah, I guess it'll be. I'm vaguely in team bubble. I think I've spent too much time reading Ed Zitron's kind of works on the sort of the slightly circular financing that's going on with some of the NVIDIA chips and things like that. The number of data centers that aren't quite getting built fast enough, and the pile of chips that have already been sold and financed with NVIDIA money to go into those data centers that are hanging around somewhere, and at the point where they're saying we're not Enron, but it's looking a bit Enron-y. So I don't know. The bubble. The big question with that, I suppose, is as energy costs shoot up at the moment, given I'm just going to wave over there everything that's going on geopolitically as well. Are we clear enough on the cost and benefit of using an AI tool to do a task, such that we'd be able to know that it would actually be cheaper to do it by hand, barring error rates and everything else? I mean, it's the hand car washes still exist, even though perfectly good automated car washes exist. And I'm not the sort of person that uses a car wash very often. I've got seagull poo all over mine, but I do understand people like shiny cars. But there's the human option persists even when there's perfectly good automation. Why is that? I know part of the answer there is probably crime and money laundering, but again, it is perfectly possible. So you still choose to go to a barista and get your coffee made when there's a perfectly good beans cup coffee machine next door. How is it possible that the humans persist? And actually, if the token cost goes up for the big AI data centers because the energy costs gone up and they're having to, there's less VC funding around to drive the back end of it and eat the loss, would we still choose to use something that was 10 times more expensive or 100?
Oh, I like that. I'm going to say something positive. Brace yourselves. This doesn't happen often. I think you have said something really important in the middle of that, which is, I want to believe, I mean, it was all important, but specifically going to get your coffee done by a person, we are social animals, and there's a little bit of me with Hope. She's very small. She's down there in her shoe, who thinks that the bubble's right. And I think part of the problem might be we do like doing things. My students don't want to use ChatGPT. They're just worried about losing grades against people that are using it more effectively. They're very aware that they're outsourcing their creativity and intelligence, most of them. And people like making paintings and reading books, and now I don't. It's gone. The hope's gone. Yeah.
So I suppose there is one very upvoted question on here that's looking more to in what ways, I don't know how well we can answer this question, but in what ways can AI support the design of new builds, and how will regulators verify these tools?
So I suppose you're thinking there, there's a lot of paperwork goes on for a new build, and therefore could AI be used to help steam shovel through some of that in a way that would have previously required kind of the use of kind of more manual intervention. I guess one of the things we've been wondering about is in a world where we know that everything in the future is going to be machine passed, how would we change our documentation to make it less error prone when it was passed, or less likely to induce an error in a large language model? The Office for National Statistics did quite a good thing a few years back, where someone, I think, politely probably pointed out to them that they make loads of really interesting data available, and it's all as Excel spreadsheets generally. And they had a horrible habit of using merged cells and putting a load of explanatory text at the top of a sheet and then getting onto the table eventually. And I think probably someone politely pointed out it's a real pain to import that into Power BI or R or Python to do some work with, to build an econometric model or something afterwards. So what they've been quite good at doing generally is putting all the explanatory text on one sheet, and then starting in row A1, there's a row of the headers and then the data, nothing else. And it's great. It's really easy to parse with computers now. And be that AI or just R or Python, just makes life easier. And could we be doing the same sort of thing with a document? Probably. I'm never going to bother writing another exec summary ever. Why would you bother? Someone's just going to chuck that at Copilot and say, hey, summarize this for me. But so why bother doubling up?
Because it's really nice and fun. No?
There we go. Don't enjoy it. So then you get into the other questions. Some of our digital apprentices did a great job of looking at how Copilot, because that's what we've got to use at work, parses graphs. And do we need to change our sort of house style to include the old school table of the numbers in the graph under the graph? Because as it stands at the moment, Copilot will occasionally just build a little Python script to do a computer vision model to extract or count the number of pixels in a pie chart and figure out roughly what the portions of the pie segments are. So it'll then use that to help infer its answer, which is really clever, but error prone. So let's not do that anymore. So one of the things is just making sure that the documentation is easy to be parsed. I guess a risk of ending up back at an expert system or something. What are they called now? We must have expert systems come around again, neurosymbolic AI and things.
Oh God, I'm drifted out for a minute. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are pushing for more neurosymbolic AI because it's more verifiable. But
But if you're not careful, you'll end up back there. So.
Very true, very true. So, with a lot more of these systems then coming into play in the nuclear industry and employees being told to use these systems, sort of thing, do employees trust these systems, or do they use them because they're told to? And is there like a difference between being told for like the adoption versus the acceptance of these systems? Especially with like the rollout of Copilot across many
the answer to that is that all of those answers are correct, because the answer to trusting a system you've been requested to use or you've chosen to use depends on how you got to the point of using it. So it's the example of the untrustworthy manager, for example, or what the implications of failure are at a gross level or a minor level. It is a question about human hierarchy and interaction, first and foremost. Trusting a system will be to do with who or what has given it to you. Depending on what country I'm in, I might use a different VPN because I don't trust the system of what's going on. So it's this sort of like layer of self-protection. Some people are really, anti being tracked or monitored, but will happily put loads of photos online and then be shocked when they realise that people can do whatever they want with it. It's all about the knowledge. If you would like to know how to stop that happening so much, we need a lot more technology literacy being taught from a very young age onwards. So we're already doing that quite well in this country in primary school when it comes to cybersecurity and protecting children online and things like that. Kids are getting classes in that now, which is great. But a lot more understanding of where does my data go? A couple of years ago, I was asked a question about this in a room full of lawyers, and I pitched an episode of Sesame Street with Elmo, who was doing media literacy with the kids. And I just think we should have more of like, Elmo says, know where your data goes. The impression was much better back then. But just trust is about the system, and I'm going to, trust is about the systems that we work in, and whether or not you believe that there are protections for you socially and politically and financially. If they aren't there, and if you haven't been in the education to be able to read up the legal stuff for yourself, even in the simplest terms, there is no trust. Bleak.
No. I like what you were saying there about the knowing where the data is and how where that goes, sort of thing. And we've got a few questions on like the data security, especially around like export controls, which is a very difficult topic to talk about. So how can we make sure that these are maintained, adhered to when using AI, and how can we control that?
Can't. Sorry, export control is the bane of my life. I will hand over to you, but I just want to say, if something is free, you are the product, and that should be the baseline understanding of any of these questions. You be cherry.
I'm going to answer in very general terms here for a bunch of fairly understandable reasons. The bulk of what we do, we're quite careful to keep it inside the UK where we can. We've got enterprise data protection agreements with Microsoft. Open question about how that works in the background. That's not really my area in the company, but we've got bright, motivated people who are very on top of this sort of thing, and we talk to them a lot. So I can't really answer that one, I'm afraid. On the previous one, what we're finding is people are tending to pull the tools towards them. Mm-hmm. So actually, again, it's Olivia and I trying to spend time educating people on why what they're doing is a good idea or not, and kind of a little bit about why. Where does your data go, and why might it be a risk? So what we're finding is people actually are pretty disappointed not to have access to the latest, greatest suite of socially enabled bits and bobs to help them be more productive in the workplace as they see it. And the sort of the data protection then around that is the bit that our IT department spends a lot of time working through. How would you re-engineer some of these tools or make something like them available to sort of enable some of these people to do more with their time? But it's people are not homogenous. We've got a real range of views in our company about how people feel about AI tooling in general and Gen AI, generative AI tools specifically. Some people do not trust them for perfectly understandable reasons. Some people want as much of them as they can get a hold of and see them as absolutely a genius new paradigm, and that there's a range of emotions in between. So it's absolutely not a one size fits all, and it's something that, but by and large, we're finding people are dragging them towards them. What's been quite interesting actually is we kept a bit of an eye on who was using Copilot once we rolled it out, and there was nothing on age. So I was kind of delighted by that actually. There's no real correlation between your age and whether you're using Copilot or not work in our place anyway. And I thought that was kind of interesting. The kind of the classic thinking about older people being laggards absolutely isn't true. And I'm kind of delighted by that. I think there's an old Douglas Loudon quote, isn't there? If anything invented before you're 30 is perfectly normal and reasonable, and you can probably get a job in it. And after that is against the natural order of things. I'm mangling that quote, but I'm kind of delighted to see that wasn't actually true. As much as I love Douglas Adams, but
so how much do all your employees know that they're being monitored, and what's that monitoring look like?
The monitoring's relatively anonymized, but it's
relatively. Yeah, love that. What a great word.
There's a whole load of terms of service that they've clicked through and signed.
So the onus is on them if they. Oh, I see. Well done, big nuclear. I sit on a steering committee at the University of Manchester. We're working on AI policy for the university, and it's quite interesting to see that the board is made up of a lot of people who are quite advanced in this area. One of my mentors is the chair, and he won't even use online banking. I find a lot of people in my field, the more they know, the less. I don't have any social media. I don't have. People always think I must live with loads of robots. I do, but they're mine and they're caged off. But it's very, monitoring. Just gonna hang on that word.
I haven't got any smart stuff in our house. We've got a couple of Linux laptops.
Because it's awful, right? Yeah, there you go.
Well, okay. As we are coming towards the end of the chat, the session now, because it has reached 3:00. So I know some people will need to dart off. So just one, I suppose, very quick final question then, just to finish with. Then it's like, what are your hopes and aspirations for AI for the next 10 years? Where do you want to see it?
I would really like the world to pull together and appreciate that regulation globally needs to be a thing, because we are now working in an age where there, for all the designs of export control, there are very few barriers between data flowing globally, right? And regulation and independent standardization is the only way to maintain global populace trust in these things. However, what did you do? Look at the stuff going on in the world right now. Is that going to happen? I don't know. 10 years' time, that's a long time. I might not be here then. More capybaras?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's people and what people use AI for rather than the AI itself, isn't it? But one of the things that has, for all the ills of misapplications of this, I mean, all this is perspective, but I'm kind of delighted in a way that this is still a field where most of the development's done in the open on GitHub. I know GitHub's got its flaws, but it's done in camera, as it were, and that's kind of delightful to me. I know it then causes other issues, which means anyone can get hold of all these tools, but it kind of delights me that this stuff's just done out in the open. It's science that's being developed, and it's not locked behind some corporation's firewall. It's there, and that's kind of delightful. I know then the applications we build with these tools can be deeply problematic or pretty dystopian, but as just from the perspective of the science itself, it's kind of interesting to watch it develop. But
is that quite a pain? It's a really pained face I get, because I just had like 3 examples that were countering that, but they're really bleak, and I'm not ending on it. I am not ending on it.
So with that, can we all join together to thank our amazing speakers for their insights and discussion on this topic? Yes. So with that, we'll bring the session to an end and to a close. So thank you all for joining us, both in person and online. Sorry we couldn't get through all the amazing questions that you guys have asked, but hopefully we've given you guys a bit more of an insight into AI and given you guys some food for thought going forward. So thank you all. Thank you.